All Hit Radio.
Welcome to the X Zone, a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. Now, here's your host, Rob McConnell.
Good evening, one and all, and welcome to the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell, and for the next 2 hours, I'm your host and your guide as together we will cross the time-space continuum to this place that I call the X Zone. It's a place where people dare to believe and dare to be heard. It's a place where fact is fiction and fiction is reality. And as you know, we come to you Monday through Friday from 10 p.m. Eastern until midnight, right here on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ, and they stream us at classic1220.ca. If you'd like to send me an email, xzone@xzoneradiotv.com, and on all social media sites, Xzone Radio TV. Our guest tonight, X-Zone Nation, is Daniela Baumann, transformational speaker, conscious living coach, and a dynamic force behind Vibrant Living Now. Through her unique blend of intuition, holistic practices, and inspired teaching, she helps individuals align with their inner truth and live from a place of vitality and authenticity. Let's dive into her journey, her mission, and what vibrant living truly means. Joining me now is Daniela Baumann. And Daniela, welcome to the X Zone.
Thank you so much, Rob. It's awesome to be on your show and share with your people.
Daniela, can you tell us about your personal journey and what led you to create Vibrant Living Now?
Sure. So first of all, I grew up in Switzerland, and I was surrounded by beautiful nature because I grew up in the highlands.
Mm-hmm.
And so I feel like I was very blessed in terms of growing up in a very vibrant environment. You know, where I didn't have to, like here where I live in California,
Mm-hmm.
I have to go to nature or in order to go for a walk, right? Well, there where I grew up, I was in nature already. So I think that kind of laid the foundation, Rob, for living a vibrant life in many ways. But for me, the ability to have a lot of energy, to know how to manage my energy in order to serve and live my purpose had from a very early age always been very important. And that included exercise, healthy eating, just really nice mindfulness habits in order to not just survive, but to actually thrive. So, because if you look at the word vibrant, vibrant in itself means it's pulse, it's energy, it's movement, it's activation, right? It's vibration. And so, vibrant living is born in many ways from those principles that we're really not here to just survive, but we're here to be revealed by life.
Your work emphasizes conscious living. Can you break down what that looks like in today's everybody's everyday life?
Sure. So conscious living, there's a big difference between just being on autopilot,
Mm-hmm.
like in today's world, right? Where people get up out of bed and the first thing you do is pull out your phone or pull out your computer, laptop in order to get the next task done. Conscious living and conscious leadership means where you intentionally start to create your day together with your day, where you're not just out there in autopilot trying to keep up with the Joneses, but where you're actually being in charge of your own schedule and you become the captain of your own ship. Meaning it requires a greater level of self-awareness and
Right.
emotional intelligence to live that way.
How did your upbringing or earlier life experiences shape your spiritual and holistic perspectives?
Well, let's see. My folks were entrepreneurs. So here goes my first book, High Performance Without Pain, right? Because I saw pain component of high performance firsthand. But they were, as entrepreneurs, I was really surrounded by parents that were quite purpose driven and they loved to work. Rob, my dad at 76, he still didn't want to stop working, and my
Oh,
mom
heavens.
had to threaten him to stop working because she couldn't keep up. See? And so I was really surrounded by these really strong work ethics. And also within the environment where I grew up is a rather small town. A lot of the folks there were also entrepreneurs. So there were quite independent, free thinking people where I grew up. And yeah, that was a blessing.
Wow. Daniela, you talk about reclaiming your power on your website. What are the first steps someone can take to begin that process?
Reclaiming your power.
Hmm.
Oh, I just love that. Well, the first way of starting to learn to reclaim your power is to see, and here is the kicker, where you're giving it away. So paying attention to where am I giving my power away? Now, some of the folks I've coached, they're like, this is a new principle to them. They're like, what do you mean? I give my power away? So becoming aware of where you are people pleasing and where you're doing things just because you think you're expected to do it, because you don't want to offend anyone. Of course, we're not talking about going out of your way to hurt people's feelings. That is not what we're talking about. But to become really more acutely aware of where am I giving my power away? Where am I feeling resentful or angry? And who could I potentially take a look at for that? Who is the most common denominator in all this, right?
Okay.
And that, of course, would be, looking in a mirror. And guess what image you're going to see there?
Yourself.
Yes.
How do you integrate Eastern wisdom and Western modalities in your coaching?
Well, I think I have quite a bit of a Zen background in just as a person that I am.
Yeah.
And what that means is I've always felt, particularly because I did grow up in the Highlands, I felt very connected to Mother
Hmm.
Earth, to everything that was around me, the colors, the trees. And so I think that interconnectedness really made a big difference in all of that. Could you elaborate on your question one more time?
Well, my question was, I think, very simple. How do you integrate Eastern wisdom and Western
Oh,
modalities in your coaching practice?
yes. So, and then of course, the Western modality part of it is, bringing much more of a structured,
Hmm.
logical thinking into the work. That's the logic is the structure, but then bringing in the intuitive aspects, more the Eastern part, the intuitive aspect that taps into the wise mind. That's really when the person is able to work with the best of both worlds, and that's where you become more conscious as a self leadership and as a leader.
In your opinion, Danielle, what role does intuition play in your own life and in the work that you do with your clients?
It plays a massive role, absolutely massive role, because in the way that I work with
Hmm.
folks, whether it's a very corporate left brain individual or right brained, by having practice to balance the left and the right hemisphere of the brain, I'm able to perceive them through my intuition beyond of what they're presenting me with. because of course what they're presenting me with is their history, their upbringing, all of that. Now, if I want to get only caught up in that, that's very limited. So my intuition allows me to have much more of a visionary view and perception about who they are now, who they actually are, and where they can go.
Danielle, you mentioned the right and left brain. What is the difference? What does the right do? What does the left do?
Okay, so the left part of the brain is your logical components. That's the one part that's kind of like black and white. There's no 50 Shades of Gray or anything in between, right?
Right.
It's pretty much black and white. And then, but with that said, there's a lot of positive aspects to that too. Of course, you have to be able to be a deductive thinker. You have to be able to make clear decisions, logical thinking. I'm very, very fond of logical thinking, which is sometimes I think what can confuse folks with me because I am so intuitive, but simultaneously I'm just as logical because it's a practice. Now we switch over and we go to the right side of the brain, right? So picture the right side of the brain. And so the right side of the brain is the intuitive component. The right side of the brain is the one that's able to be perceptive. And perceptive means it's much more all-inclusive. It's able to perceive what's outside of what it's only seeing. So it's between those two. Visionary insights don't come from the left side of the brain per se. However, it comes from the right side. However, the left side of the brain is going to help you put those visionary insights to work, just like with my second book, Gliding You Home. That being able to have both allowed me then to publish the book and write more books and do a variety of different things because I was combining in both aspects. It's really learning how to shift those gears. And
Danielle, we're having a bit of audio problems with you. Are you still there?
live.
All right, Exo Nation, we're going to take a break now, and we're going to.
I hear you back.
Okay, we're going to try and rectify these issues here. Daniela Baumann is our special guest. Her website is vibrantlivingnow.org. This is the X Zone. I am Rob McConnell, and we're coming to you from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, CFAJ, here in St. Catharines, broadcasting throughout the province of Ontario, the northern tiers of the state of New York, and the northern tiers of the state of Pennsylvania. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away.
I'm singing to the world. It's time we let the spirit come in. Let it come on in. I'm singing to the world. Everybody's caught in the spin. Look at where we've been. We've been running around year after year, blinded with pride, blinded with fear. But it's daybreak. If you wanna believe it can be daybreak, ain't no time to grieve. Said it's daybreak.
And welcome back, everyone. Daniela Baumann is our special guest, and her website is vibrantlivingnow.org. Daniela, in today's high stress world, what are some of the essential practices to help people reconnect with their inner peace? Because everybody is so stressed out these days.
Yes, so that's one of the reasons why I wrote my first book, to help and combat some of these stresses, particularly in today's corporate world, but of course it affects all of us. And so some of the practices can be starting to use mindfulness.
Okay, so what do you see as the greatest obstacle people today face in living authentically?
The greatest obstacle that they face,
Yes.
that they're consumed by everything that's going on the outside. So their orientation is very externally oriented, being consumed and identified by everything that's going on out there in their work life. They forget that outside, or we forget sometimes that outside of everything we do, that is not who we are.
But is
So the
it?
more we end up bringing our human being into our human doing, the more we can then gently slow down our pace and redirect our actions
But
in a way that serves us.
But in today's fast-paced way of living, the 724, 365 bombardment of information, isn't that a little hard, especially if you're part of the corporate world?
Yes, it can be hard. However, with that said, it requires a conscious decision. And oftentimes folks that have decided that they don't want to live it the old way anymore, they're willing to do the work that it takes in order to become more conscious.
I
I'm
understand.
sorry.
Sure, I understand that people sometimes look at the new way and say, well, this is way too much for me. I have to go back to stopping and smelling the roses as I'm taking a walk through the forest. But in the world of high finance, in the world of international news, in the world of the geopolitical upsets, isn't that asking a little bit too much?
Well, I think that too much it all depends on the person, on the individual themselves. Many of the companies that are very successful, including Google, they meditate. They even promote meditation. So they realize that when they go from go, 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 I apologize, to
Sure.
slow, 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 that even within that short amount of time, they can redirect and reclaim much more of who they are. Now, is this a dilemma? Absolutely. If you're in the kind of world that you're just describing, the temptation to get lost in that is very, very big. And it's very easy to be swept up by that. But that's just that when that happens is you're basically consumed by utter doingness. You are pretty much stepped out of your authentic self, and you're just on autopilot. And
But
some people will live that way. That is what they will choose until there is an intervention through crisis.
I can understand the way that Google operates because it's not what I would consider to be a typical corporate entity. But when you're looking at Wall Street, if you're looking at the banking world, when you're looking at high finances,
Sure.
I don't know of any places on Wall Street or any market businesses that actually take time to meditate. They can't.
Yeah, that's most likely that's what I was saying. Unless the person themselves realizes, okay, while I'm working, it's not happening.
Yeah.
But you know what, Rob? But here's a curious thing. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of high pressure in that. But if even the person that is in that environment, if they start to learn to practice presence, okay, they can weave presence in multiple times an hour within seconds of increments. And that could simply be if they have a drawing of an ocean, of a beach, and they look at it and they slow down in stillness and just gaze to that water or to that cloud. And they reclaim, then that gives you a power to reclaim that present moment for just a moment. For just a second, because I'll tell you why, Rob, because it creates a gap. It creates a small space between here and there. So even there, you can bring that presence back to yourself, because presence ultimately and genuine conscious living is not dependent upon the state out there and external validation thereof, but it is determined on the space of presence that you've created within yourself. Even for you, Rob, in between having different people on the radio show, right? Those little gaps of moments can be practiced, and that could be very powerful. I speak from experience due to clients that I have worked with that felt like, how the hell, excuse my language, am I going to do that? You want me to do what?
Well, you see, I'm very fortunate because our studios are on top of a high-rise building in St. Catharines, and when I look out our studio window, I see Lake Ontario, I see the city of Toronto directly across, I see beautiful sunrises and beautiful sunsets.
Yeah.
And I do that quite often. I just take a peek out and look, and I can understand what you're saying. But would it not also work for people who are in high stress jobs, like we were talking about the stock market and other financial industries, to do this at home so that they could actually unload at home away from the office?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. So practicing presence is something presence ultimately, Rob, is not something that you do.
Oh.
It's something that you become. So when you are, for example, you're having a dialogue, you're in the middle of a conversation, right? Or you're starting a conversation, and you are having somebody in front of you, right? And you, first of all, become present to that person in front of you, right? For just a second. Now picture this high caliber person working in finances, that it's themselves. It's actually yourself. Picture, instead of going into a dialogue with that other person, that person is you sitting across from you. And you just starting to observe that person. You're starting to scan. You're starting to see how they're doing. And that ultimately brings in a whole different level of awareness and observation, because when you go into presence, you step out of absent-mindedness into mindfulness and attentiveness. So then you become very present to what is and what's happening. And so anybody listening, you can practice presence at home or anywhere you're at, just by simply carving out these small moments of stillness where you acutely observe a flower, a rose, your own hands, or picturing the one that you love, whether that's a wife, a husband, a child, in front of you, and become completely absorbed in that moment and present.
All right, but you can't do this while you're having a meeting, when you're face to face with someone.
No, you cannot do that
Right.
while you're having. Yeah.
You know, you mentioned embodying your truth as a key part of your mission. What does that mean on a practical level?
Embodying your truth.
Hmm.
Well, when you say embody, so embody means that it's not just something that you do, it's something that you embody. You have become that. You have become your truth because you start to live your truth from the inside out.
So that's the old saying, you know, he talks the talk and walks the talk.
Absolutely. That is basically embody. Anyone that knows me knows I'm pretty genuine. I'm pretty authentic,
Hmm.
straightforward. And they also know I don't tolerate, if I feel something is really off, I'm out.
You're a
I'm
square
gone.
shooter. You're a square shooter.
I don't have patience for
Yeah.
that. It's a waste of my time.
I understand that fully. I truly do. And that's how I
Yeah.
am, you know. If you can't respect me, respect my time, then I'm sorry. Go your own
Yeah.
way.
Hmm.
We've got about 30 seconds before I have to go to my next break. You've got 2 books out, right?
Yes.
And what are the books titled?
So the first book is pretty much along the topic of what we were just talking about. It's called High Performance Without Pain.
Okay.
A 7-step blueprint to reclaim your vibrant life and get even more done. And that's for the high performer
Okay,
and those
we've got
wanting
to.
to be.
I just needed the titles.
Oh, okay, yes. Oh, High Performance Without Pain.
Mm-hmm.
And the second book is Gliding You Home.
And they're available on Amazon.com?
Yes, Amazon, my website, Audible.
Oh, okay, super. You and I will be back after this short break.
Okay.
Exonation Daniela Baumann is our special guest. Her website is vibrantlivingnow.org. This is The X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell, and we'll be back on the other side of this very short break as we continue. From our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada, on the X Zone Broadcast Network, Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, and your hometown radio, 1220 CFAJAM, and that's Classic 1220. Streaming at classic1220.ca.
Let it come on in, I'm singing to the world. Everybody's caught in the spin. Look at where we've been running around year after year, blinded with pride, blinded with fear. But it's daybreak, if you wanna believe it can be daybreak. The light shines down the valley, the wind blows up the alley. Oh, and I wish I was lying in the arms of Mary. She took the pains of boyhood and turned them into feel good. Oh, and I wish I was lying in the arms of Mary. Mary was the girl that taught me all I had to know. She put me right on the first mistake. Summer wasn't gone and I learned all she had to show. She really gave all a boy could take. Yeah. So now.
And that's The Arms of Mary by Canadian band Chilliwack. You're listening to the X Zone Radio Show on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, and of course on your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ AM in St. Catharines, Ontario, streaming us on classic1220.ca. You know, Exonation, a funny thing happened during the commercial break. As many of you know, I've been battling this summer cold. Well, I don't know if we can call it a summer cold. It's still springtime. And I during the break, I asked my producer, Craig, to go get me a Neocetran. And as you may have heard in the first segment of the show, my guest started coughing. And I'd like you to tell our guest, our listeners, what happened, Daniela.
Yes, so suddenly, just out of the complete blue, I started to cough and I couldn't quit it, frankly. I couldn't continue talking.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, I had a little water right there. And so we were talking about the left and the right hemisphere, and we were also talking about logic and intuition, and how, when you have a more perceptive, intuitive ability, how you're able to see the person way beyond what they're wanting to present to you or their historic self. Well, now I figured out I picked up on Rob's cold and cough because I have not coughed like this. I don't remember last time. So there is the proof in the pudding.
There
Thanks,
you,
Rob.
hey, my pleasure. I'm sorry we had to prove it that way, and I hope after I have the citron, you'll feel better.
Oh, goodness.
Exonation, my guest this hour is Daniela Baumann, and her website is vibrantlivingnow.org. Daniela, can you describe some of the transformational programs or retreats you offer?
Sure. So I offer a variety of different programs. So one, first of all, is I'm a transformational speaker, and that is where I talk a lot about conscious leadership and how to basically go from just surviving to thriving, and a multitude of other transformational leadership tools that I've
Hmm.
seen across the years that are very beneficial. And then I offer also um, life performance and life mastery coaching. I work a lot with executives and with folks on any walk that are wanting to really up level their personal and professional development. And we often tap into their spiritual component as well, because, after all, we are mind, body, and spirit. And I also offer retreats.
Hmm.
One of the latest retreats was called Dolphin Harmony. It was an inner peace retreat. So I customize and create destination retreats as well, where I combine a lot of the more logical, left-brained teachings together with a more intuitive, holistic viewpoint, and help folks to find greater alignment within themselves and their work and the world that they live in, so they can be successful not at the cost of them, but because of themselves.
And I would imagine all this information is on your website at vibrantlivingnow.org.
It is, Rob.
Excellent. How do sound healing or vibrational therapies play into the coaching and healing work that you do?
I don't really do a lot of sound healing per se.
Okay.
I do. I work a lot with music. So music is part of my, whenever I put on a retreat or I
Uh-huh.
have somebody that I work with one-on-one, there's always there's the kind of music like binaural sounds that help to balance the right and the left.
Well, wouldn't
Uh,
that be classified as sound healing?
yeah, I guess you could say so. Yes. It's sort of like more power for the course. Now, because again, for me, it's all about bringing in, I want to bring all of you to the table when I work
Hmm.
with you, whether it's on Zoom or in person, or of course at a retreat. It is very, very much like that and experientially based, where people will walk away and go, wow, they could feel a shift, they could feel a pivot.
In your experience, what is the most powerful catalyst for personal transformation?
Crisis.
Wow.
Yes. So we oftentimes really do need crisis and chaos. And it is exactly that what helps us to go deeper and look under the hood. I've worked with my share of corporate folks that are very successful
Hmm.
in their bank account and otherwise, but their wives are getting, well, and it could be both ways. Their wife wants to divorce them because they're too consumed with their work, or their kids are acting out. And of course, now we have a crisis going on. You know, there's a lot of focus on their work, and it's not a holistic view of what life actually is supposed to look like in the living in a successful way. So hence my straightforward saying, crisis. It is crisis that helps us to want to go deeper.
Many people struggle with setting boundaries. That's nothing unusual. What advice do you have to offer on the topic of setting boundaries?
Well, folks look at setting boundaries as setting boundaries with others first, right? That's oftentimes what it's thought of. However,
Mm-hmm.
knowing your own set of rules of what it is you're willing to tolerate and not tolerate, that's really first order of business. Where you're realizing this is a simple example, but let's just say someone even let's just take for you for example,
Sure.
let's just work with you. If somebody is late for one of your radio
Mm-hmm.
shows, right, and you've tried that person 2 3 times and you continue to try them, well, you can basically put it straight out right from the get-go. Shows start on time. You have one time, we'll let you pass, and then we're going to move on, right? So knowing what it is that you want and need in order for you to be happy and healthy at home and at work is number one. And that's one reason why many folks are not able to set successful boundaries, because they're trying to please everyone else, whether that's the husband, the wife, the kids, the boss. And then they're trying to infuse boundaries, and they're just not going to work because these boundaries are not coming from an authentic, powerful place. Because when they're communicated that way, Rob, then people realize, oh, she actually means it, right? For
Yeah.
example, with some of my clients, some of my youth clients I've had in the past, um, the parents had not set boundaries with them, and then I suddenly started to set boundaries. And then when they realized I was actually real about setting the boundaries, they weren't real happy about it. But then guess what happened? They respected me much more for it because they knew I was actually going to enforce them.
And that I'm sure it doesn't happen to them at home.
Yes, that oftentimes does not
Mm-hmm.
happen to them. Like I remember this one young lady, she tried to cancel her appointment um, shortly before the session. And I knew this was just a little something of her changing her mind, like
Oh,
the
yeah.
wind turns kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I basically said to her, listen, you have a couple of choices. You can reschedule. I'll let you reschedule at a time that's convenient for both of us. And no worries, we'll continue on. Or if you do not reschedule this particular session, I'm going to have to ask your dad and you to put a check in the mail for me. However, I don't take any satisfaction from that, right? So I explained that to her.
Mm-hmm.
And so guess who had the check in the mail? I mean, and guess who rescheduled like immediately, right?
Well, yeah, no, money talks.
So, and then later on,
Mm-hmm.
I spoke with her dad about it, and he said, good for you. Nobody ever sets boundaries like that with her, you know, because I was serious. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you think?
Well, it seems that parenting today is a lot different from when you and I were a child. The entire part of being a child, you knew your place and you were taught respect. You were taught that your word is your bond. And, we didn't have three, $400, $500 running shoes. We got a pair of running shoes at the beginning of the summer, and that lasted us the entire summer, and then and so on. And it was yes, dad, no, dad, yes, mum, no, mum. Everybody was at the table, communicating at supper time, talking without these electronic gadgets interrupting your family time. And it seems that parenting these days has gone by the side. And when you look at it, I kind of say, well, I understand in one respect that mom and dad have to both work because they need the double income in today's lifestyles. I understand that. But I don't understand mom and dad not spending time with their children when they have the opportunity, and thus, creating a stronger bond within the family unit. And when that family bond is present and recognized, it helps build respect.
Absolutely, that's very
Yeah,
well said. That's exactly right. So I find that kids need boundaries,
definitely.
they need consequences, and as a matter of fact, they love it because now with me, they knew I'm always pretty easy-go-lucky, meaning I'm not a moody person. So when they work with me,
Yeah.
I'm not one time I'm this way, the other time I'm a completely different way. However, they knew I will check in on the home assignments, and that's with adults too.
All right.
It's like if we're working together, we have to do the work together and be
Stand,
present.
stand, stand by, Daniela. I've got to take my final break. And Exo Nation, Daniela Baumann is my guest this hour, and we're going to be wrapping up this segment of the show. Still to come is hour number 2 of tonight's show, and that'll be after the top of the hour. However, if you'd like to find out more about Danielle and the great work she does, her books, her lectures, her seminars, her getaways, visit www.vibrantlivingnow.org. This is the X Zone. I'm Rob McConnell. You're listening to us on the X Zone Broadcast Network and on your hometown radio, Classic 1220, CFAJ AM in St. Catharines, streaming us on classic1220.ca.
Me right on the first mistake. Summer wasn't gone, and I learned all she had to show. She really gave all a boy could take. Gonna make a change for once in my life. It's gonna feel real good. Gonna make a difference. Gonna make it right. As I turn up the collarbone, my favorite winter coat. This wind is blowing my mind. I see the kids in the street with not enough to eat. Who am I to be blind, pretending not to see their need? A son's disregard, a broken bottle top, and a one-man soul. They follow each other on the window, 'cause they got nowhere to go. That's why I want you to know I'm starting with the man in the mirror. I'm asking him to change his ways, and no message could have been any clearer. If you wanna make the world a better place, take a look at yourself and then make a change. Na, 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 na.
And welcome back. That's Michael Jackson singing Man in the Mirror. And I believe that the answers to all your life's problems can be found by just looking at yourself in the mirror. First of all, Danielle, it's great having you on the show. These are very trying times for everyone. And I'm sure that as we go through the different geopolitical, financial problems that we're all facing today, with the tariffs and all the rest of the political shenanigans that's going on, that we will be able to solve these problems. But there is times when we need help to figure things out, and I think this is where you and what you do come in.
Yes, this is definitely a trying time, but also this is part of the paradigm shift that we're sort of operating. And actually, both of my books, the first one and the first one, and then the second one builds on the first one, is really about moving into your greater self mastery. So you are, just like we were talking about earlier, you're not so consumed or taken over or blindsided by what's going on out there, because this is going to allow you, as you continue to develop this greater emotional awareness or intelligence, as we call it, the help to really create these responses to your life versus just reacting in autopilot or on autopilot to what's happening, because this is a big transitionary phase that we're going through, and this is meant for all of us, including starting back with COVID. This is about evolving. This is about the evolvement of our consciousness to not just continue to react and say and respond the same way we always have. And out of that, the new life is going to come, and that means change.
Mm-hmm. Can you share with us a memorable success story or a breakthrough from someone you've worked with?
Sure. So someone I've worked with, um, this particular gentleman was a CFO of a Fortune 500 company.
Mm-hmm.
He was very successful professionally.
Right.
He was just climbing that ladder. He was involved in the very involved in the political arena as well. And a client of mine, those are usually the best referrals, referred him to me. And basically, the reason why he called me was because he said, I'm losing it. My staff is thinking that I have it all together, but it's the scenario I just explained earlier or shared earlier, Rob, where the wife wants to divorce him,
Yeah.
the kids are acting out, that kind of scenario. And when he first came in, his energy was just amazing, great energy. I love folks like that. But he was all over. It was just all over. So we started to practice to bring gentleness and gentle awareness and presence back to his own person, to his own being, to his own feeling, and starting to find and feel, not just find it, but feel some peace through this gentle self-compassion. And as he did, it allowed him to drop off some of the baggage that he was hauling around with the huge responsibilities and thousands of team members working for him. And I remember after a few sessions, he was leaving my office, and he looked at me and he said, Daniela, I have to tell you something. And I go, okay, go ahead. And he said, I never realized that simply going from go, go, go to slow, slow, slow and focusing on my own self, that would put me back in my driver's seat. Not in a million years did I think that this approach would yield these results.
That is some story. That is some. The guy slowed down. Did he save his family?
Yes.
Did he save his family?
Yes, he
Excellent.
did. I mean, it took a little doing.
Sure.
You know, it's and there had been quite a bit of damage. You know, he left a few things in his wake, but his ability to come back to himself, to come back home. You see, to come back home to that gentle heart that he ultimately really did have, and the servant leadership that he did have, because he ultimately, as much as he was the boss of everyone, he served everyone else. He was not in charge of himself. He allowed everyone else to dictate his life. You see, he was no longer in control, and that's what I've seen with many folks in bigger positions.
Well,
They think they are in control, but they no longer are.
but doesn't it make sense, Daniela, that if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else?
Well, Rob, yes, but that's not how. Let's go back to the stereotypical little boys don't cry, or boys don't cry, men don't cry, right? Children need to be seen, not heard. All these,
Uh-huh.
you should not put yourself ahead of someone else's needs. Those kind of thing, right? Or examples, right? So again, it's just living from a past experience, not being present with what is really authentic, genuine, and aligned now. Because oftentimes the biggest misconception about peak performance, like this particular individual really was a peak performer, is that we can, reframe success without that internal resistance. And so many folks believe that success requires sacrifice, overworking, pushing harder, not smarter, and ignoring well-being together with the people that are in our lives, right? So, however, the way I work, being a promoter and a platform for holistic success, is that true peak performance is basically about sustainability, Rob, where clarity, presence, and alignment create effortless results without depletion, or not that much. Let's just say that.
Danielle, my final question for you tonight is, what do you say to skeptics of holistic healing and spiritual coaching?
What do I say to
Yeah,
skeptics?
like not everybody believes in holistic healing or spiritual coaching, and yet this is what you do. So when somebody says, it's a bunch of hooey, what do you say to them?
I would ask them how they define it. How do you define spiritual coaching? Now, my work is spiritual and pragmatic, but how do you define it and why?
Well, let me ask you this then. Somebody listening tonight has heard our hour together, and after listening, Tom turns to his wife Nancy and says, "That's a bunch of bunk." How do we react, or how do you react to those kind of statements?
Well, I guess he just wasn't ready
Ah,
to receive the message.
okay.
That's and oftentimes when there is a resistance like that,
Mm-hmm.
there has been some trigger that that brought something up where oftentimes they just don't want to take a look at it.
I see.
So,
Well, you must admit, in the world of mentoring and coaching, there are literally thousands upon thousands of people that are doing it these days on the internet. They advertise on TV, they advertise in publications, and so on. How does somebody who is looking for a legitimate personal coacher, personal coach, how do they find one that is real and not just somebody who's given themselves a self-proclaimed title and got themselves a website and take PayPal for payments with no
right.
experience? Yeah,
That's an excellent question, and that is very actually that's it's not that easy to find someone. I oftentimes, Rob, I get my clients through
hmm,
referrals because, like I was just sharing with you this particular example, you know. Um, but what I would definitely look for reviews, look for testimonials. Like on my website, for example, I have many, I'm very
hmm,
privileged and honored to have video testimonials of clients
yeah,
that would have never done this ahead of the coaching. And at the end of the coaching, they're like, just the other day, somebody was texting me back, an ex-client, and he goes, "Do you want me to do a video
hmm.
testimonial instead?" And I'm like, "Yeah,
All right,
right."
Daniela, we've come to the point where I must say so long because our interview is over. I want to thank you so much for joining us. And Exo Nation, if you'd like to find out more about our guest this hour, visit our website. www.vibrantlivingnow.org. That's www.vibrantlivingnow.org. Daniela, thank you for sharing your wisdom and your inspiration with us tonight. May we take all steps toward living more vibrantly and authentically. I'll be back on the other side of this very short break as the X Zone continues with yours truly, Rob McConnell, from our broadcast center and studios in St. Catharines, Ontario, Canada. And you're listening to us around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network, Mutual Broadcast Network, X Zone Broadcast Network, and of course on your hometown radio, Classic 1220 CFAJ, that broadcasts here in St. Catharines throughout the province of Ontario, the northern tiers of the state of New York, and Pennsylvania. They also stream us at www.classic1220.ca. Don't go away, we'll be right back.